everybody, and welcome back to Worlds 2022, live from the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. After T1's dominating victory over JD Gaming just yesterday, we are all set for an LCK versus LCK Grand Final next weekend. But which team will join the three-time world champions? Will it be a 2016 and 2017 finals rematch versus Gen.G, or can DRX keep up their miracle run? I'm joined at the State Farm Analyst Desk by Emily, Vedius, and Mark Z to break down all the happenings of the day, hoping it can live up to the series that was delivered just yesterday, with T1 taking it in 3-1 fashion to get back to another grand final.
My good golly gosh, Dash. It was an incredible series yesterday, and it was a pleasure to be a part of, just because of the sheer amount of violence that we saw on the Rift. There was bloodshed absolutely everywhere, yet we still got to see some incredibly high-quality League of Legends.
Yeah, the big thing for me was the matchup that we hyped, because sometimes you hype up a top lane matchup and you're like, oh, now they're both going to play tanks and not do much. No, they were going at it almost every single game. It was great to see Zeus and 369 really live up to the hype.
Yeah, Guma as well, stepping up, performing incredibly. FLICKR, as someone who had been like less focused on in terms of gameplay, had a monstrous performance on Rise of all champions. Like, there was just so much cool stuff going on.
It was very cool to see how the series itself morphed, right? As you mentioned, Emily, the focus of the top laners at the top of the day, but by the end, it became about the AD carries and who could put out the damage in the late game team fights, nearing almost a kill per minute across a 4-game series. You get that in a single game and you're happy. You get it across 4 games and you're living large. We'll see if Gen.G and DRX can deliver today as our second and final semi-final. But Gen.G, no stranger to the international stage either. If anybody's in touching distance of T1 organizationally, a number of people are going to look at this Gen.G organization.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is actually Samsung White, and then we're going to see some Samsung Blue, as people might remember, or maybe not. They were Samsung before KSV and then Gen.G took over, and this is kind of back in the era of sister teams, where these two teams took over the entire League of Legends world in 2014.
A lot of people still hold that 2014 Samsung White was one of the best rosters ever assembled, and Samsung Blue was also insanely formidable. They traded back and forth in the LCK before coming to Worlds. It was just an insane run that these orgs had, continuing into the finals against T1 when they kind of merged together.
And I think the craziest thing to me is that while many talk of T1 as this incredibly historic team, largely because of the success that they've had on the international stage, but this organization is no stranger themselves. With 6 Worlds appearances, multiple semifinals, finals appearances, this roster has had a history of incredibly talented players alongside continuing to generate new generational talent.
Now, that said, while the organization's got all of that history, the new mainstay, kind of the central figure of the roster, of course, a lot of people are going to look at Ruler as the AD carry, a guy who's already been at the top once before, but looking to do it again.
Yeah, and Ruler, when they kind of signed him to this long-term contract, the idea is that he would be their franchise mainstay, right? Like, he was the young player that they were going to build around since he was Bung and then came up into Samsung and then transitioning into Gen.G. Here we see all of his accomplishments, but only, interestingly enough, 1 LCK title, and he's also looking to return to that Worlds final, right? Because since his being announced as kind of the mainstay, he hasn't had that same level of international success that he definitely would have wanted.
There's a lot of League of Legends players who kind of explode onto the scene. They have some of their highest accomplishments within their first year or two. That was kind of Ruler's story as well, being able to make that Worlds, win it, and then had that period of time where he kept making Worlds, but like you said, didn't find an LCK title. It's really cool. It kind of parallels a little bit, not quite with the same exact longevity as Deft and FLICKR, but another player who has actually been around a long time and has had to kind of maintain that form over tons of years.
Yeah, and Deft is kind of counterpart on the other side as a player that, when we look across his history, has also had an incredible series of runs. And I think that as a player, when we look at these 280 carries, they're kind of two of the big stories that we look at when coming into today.
I think the contrast is obviously that one of those guys has been to the top. The other guy, well, a longer standing member of the international league scene, hasn't quite been able to get it done just yet. That is Deft.
Yeah, Deft is one of the mainstays that people probably grew up watching. I know I remember seeing him for the first time, seeing the alpaca hair that everyone has always kind of identified with, and just been around since the beginning of the game. You think about your own scene, whatever you follow the most, LPL, LCK, LCS, whatever, there's very few players who are still around from those early days, before the map changed, before the UI changed, and we had all these spectator tools. You know, Deft was there crushing it.
Yeah, and the coolest thing with Deft, in my opinion, is how he started as this like phenomenal team fight AD carry, right? Like Samsung Blue were the team where they would just wait for him to scale on something like a Kog'Maw or his Ezreal and then just take over a game. However, you know, through his time in the LPL and as he's evolved, he's become just such a well-rounded, phenomenal player. You can already hear the cheers for him on stage right now.
And he absolutely has a history that's worth diving deeper into. And we're going to do just that with the second ever edition of Draw My Life with Emily Rand.
Draw my OGN champions LCK life. DRX Deft. Deft debuted with MVP Blue in 2013. At the end of that year, MVP was bought by Samsung and went into 2014 with two teams, Blue, Deft's team, and White. Due to his resemblance to the animal, Deft was given the nickname of Alpaca. Fans still often draw alpacas on his fan signs and bring him alpaca plushies. While on Samsung Blue, Deft won Champion Spring 2014 and made it to finals again that summer. Blue and White took over Champions Korea as Samsung became the strongest organization. Deft became known as the best teamfighting ADC in the world. In 2015, Deft joined Edward Gaming. During his time on EDG, paired with their new support, Viego, Deft transformed further, not into just a great teamfighter, but a strong laner, making him one of, if not the best ADCs in the world. After success on EDG for 2 years, Deft returned to South Korea to play with a star-studded lineup of Smeb, Score, Pon, and Mata on KT Rolster. In 2018, he won his second domestic title. Since leaving KT at the end of 2018, Deft has been on Kingzone Dragon X, DRX, Hanwha Life Esports, and back to DRX. In total, he has been to Worlds 7 times. Deft's trophy case: 2 Champions/LCK titles, 2 LPL titles, 1 MSI title. The only major title that still eludes Deft is Worlds. As one of the 10 players on Samsung's 2014 sister teams, Deft is the only one still playing professionally. He is also well known for being someone who other players like Chovy seek out, want to play with, and is still friends with many of his former teammates. And I think for me, the thing about Deft's longevity is that he's obviously had a lot of ups and downs, but coming to this Worlds, people were wondering if this was going to be his last year. It's kind of something that's hung over his past few performances, and seeing him make it to a semifinal has just been so great.
Yeah, and the quarterfinal, which was kind of the culmination of so many things, on his birthday, that insane backdoor denial, rallying through the 5 games, 4-1 series people were joking about, just seems to have that kind of like magic it factor where everything's going his way for a team that was not super hyped up heading into the event.
Now, of course, while everyone is a fan favorite of Deft. Everyone loves him. His journey has not been an easy one. Throughout his career, he suffered many difficulties, and this year wasn't really any different, because when we look at the matchup ahead of us and when we look at his competition versus Gen.G, it's not as straightforward as many would expect. Right now, Gen.G holds a 12-game win streak over DRX, but there is some good news, because when we look at just this year, it's only wait, no, it's only an 8-0 record. They actually beat them 2-0 every single time they met. But when we look at the all-time, it does get a little bit better, right? Because the all-time versus Gen.G and DRX is still pretty favored for Gen.G there, 22 and 14. Yeah, I've got some early game stats, so I'm pretty sure that the early game actually from this year, when we look at the last 4 LCK games, an average of 3,500 gold, like an average. Guys, I'm sure you've got better stats than me, right? Like, I had some good early... Wait,
well, mid to late game?
Wait, they only... A minor deficit, only 1%, 0.1% of the time. But surely the Ruler-Deft matchup is surely way more favored for Ruler. It's a lot more favored for Ruler. That's a 1,000 gold average and 824 damage per minute. Yeah, so Gen.G have kind of dominated DRX all year, but surely it's not that bad, right?
You're telling me it's a 3-0 DRX. Is what you're saying you're going to predict, right? After all that?
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case.
Well, but go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I'll come in with a little bit of hopium, because I do think, as someone who didn't even expect DRX to be here, I expected Live Sandbox to be here. They have performed really well at Worlds. You see here their LCK summer statistics versus their World statistics, much improved across every single category, some by a very significant margin. And for me, the main difference has been Pyosik and how well he's been playing with the team. As people might have known, he was substituted out, looked very shaky with Jihan also taking reps with the team. And then here, I do want to point out, in the beginning of this series against EDG, it was a lot of what Atlas loves to call a K-ram, where both teams weren't really paying attention to side lanes all that much. But here, I did actually really like how they used Kingen in side lanes in this game specifically. And you're actually about to see BeryL get caught out here. But even then, DRX are able to end up taking the bot tier 2. And I just think their evolution with having more coordination, Pyosik playing a lot better around his lanes and with the team, and then them seeing the map better has been amazing.
Yeah, I think the improvements that they've made makes you kind of able to throw out some of the stuff from the regular season for Gen.G. Yeah, I'm not saying they're suddenly favored, but this is such an improved team that a lot of those kinds of statistics have been outdone, and you really want to look at what the team's doing now, and it's like you said, such good side lane play, such good mid lane play out of Zeka in his melee champion pool, but still being able to bust out the Azir and whatnot, and BeryL's weird champion picks and stuff. People make fun of him because he kind of like runs it a little bit because he's so aggressive, but there's also times where that play is like what enables them to go follow up on it.
And those pushing bot lanes have been massive too, right? Like obviously this is going to be a very bot lane focused matchup. And that Ashe Heimer that they brought out, I think really changed the way teams had to adapt to them.
Yeah, and of course, it's very easy to get hung up on history, right? How a team has done in the past, but Worlds is all about how you perform on the day. And for DRX, they have been, for many, the surprise of the tournament. Now, we do have a special guest with us today. When it comes to yes, exactly, I know, I kept this a secret from you. When it comes to cooking up drafts, there's only one person that we trust, and that, of course, is Chefius.
Bonjour, my friends. How's it going? It's a pleasure to be here in Atlanta. Do you know, there's as many people here as there are in Wales. It's quite shocking, a little overwhelming, I'll be honest.
Are you French or
17,000?
Welsh?
Yeah, it's not big place.
population.
There's a lot of grass.
Also, yeah, are we oscillating between French
bonjour, but then what are you?
I'm Welsh, mate. I'm from Wales, the beautiful country of Wales. Very good at
Aren't
rugby.
you, Vedius, also from Wales? Why is your
that's someone
accent
else.
changed
Listen,
if you're already Welsh?
I'm here to educate this desk on how to draft, because I've seen your graphic. I am a big fan, James.
The
a very
champion
big fan.
presence
It's lovely.
is great, right?
I will say, though,
109.
that I think there are ways we can spruce it up. So that's what I'm here to help with, okay? So, to
Spruce
start
away.
things off in my little batter here, I've prepared, because we are in North America, a clown. You know, have you thought about it? I think that adding a clown to the draft in perhaps the jungle, in perhaps support, is a way in which we can shake things up, catch you by surprise, perhaps. But I'm already seeing from your face,
Right.
you're not in love.
I was going to say, we're in
Not
North America.
love.
These are Korean teams, though, so I'm
True.
not sure if they'll
So
jump
how
into the
about
clown thing.
a little bit of a throwback?
Yeah.
Malzahar.
Ooh.
World champion, Malzahar champion. And I know you've got an analyst that's very familiar with the champion as well. Am I
What's
right?
his name?
I don't know.
I know, yeah.
But
I
there's
forgot
not
about
crown.
that guy.
There's no more
Yeah.
crown.
Okay,
in
there's
here.
no more
Zeka
crown.
wants to play
Okay,
aggressive.
you're not
Zeka's
keen on that.
aggressive.
Don't worry, I've come prepared. On. This man is all about murder.
I've
He can
seen
kill
him
you in the
before.
top lane. He can kill you in the jungle. The fans are big fan, but yesterday we didn't see any. Not really any on, but we need to bring this man back into the champions.
Is this tank Orn or carry Orn?
He's support on and he's jungle on and he's every other
Tank
on.
is carry
Now,
Orn in
I
fairness.
recognize that you guys maybe not convinced by my individual picks.
No,
So
not quite.
I've cooked up some drafts.
You
ready
cook
for
everything
you.
in the same bowl?
Yeah, obviously.
And with a whisk?
Don't just trust
No
me.
other tools.
It's baking.
Let's show them
scared.
Okay.
these juicy drafts. Look at this. Zero engage. Absolutely creative. Things that you've never seen before. Different
These are just
every
their
time.
drafts from this tournament.
Yeah.
What?
Sure we haven't seen
I
these
think I
before?
No,
recognize
these
these.
are original.
No, I've been to this
What?
restaurant.
Mum? What are you doing here?
Pyosik
Okay, that was great. Enjoy.
Kindred.
I'll catch you later, guys.
This is
So
just
he just wants them to run it back. Is what
It's just the
Chefius
exact
wants
draft
to see.
from
Run it
What?
back.
yeah.
That's such a
Typical
EU.
Chefius just copy pasting other recipes and be like, I made this.
Yeah, there it is.
So I will say, as troll as that was, there are some things to look at from the past, from DRX, that I think are very interesting. Going
Yes.
back to the summer record that they played, they had some really interesting drafts into Gen.G. We're talking about how you kind of have to throw out some of the gameplay stuff, but I do think like their approach, they always took unique picks into Gen.G whenever they played in the regular season because they felt outmatched. They would go for these kind of, not cheese drafts, but very unique in how they want to approach the game. Here, it's basically a Seraphine kind of Juggernaut ball comp. And after they get that initial pick onto Lehends, they do such a good job actually controlling this against Gen.G at the Baron. And this is one of the closest games they had all split, even though they did lose.
Yeah, I really liked this game from DRX. I think it shows their strengths. Also, a really interesting thing here for me is that Deft is on the Kog'Maw, something he's really familiar with.
Absolutely the case. I definitely want to dig into that a little bit more because I worked with Piglet, you know, when I was coaching.
Yeah.
And Juggernaut was a huge thing. Deft obviously played a lot of Juggernaut back in the day as well. And there's a couple of things when you're playing against it you need to work out. And this is what makes Gen.G so good. Despite DRX getting that Baron, you see they have Seoul here. They took both inhibs. They end up losing this game. And it's because Gen.G is so good in mid to late game at telestrating, or how they want to close out these games problem solving. So on the telestrator here, you'll see Peanut's going to pull out of the Dragon Pit and start marking Kingen, who has already used his Shyvana ult. Another thing is when you're playing against Kog'Maw, you want to wait for the W to go on cooldown. So Deft is trying to buy space in here to walk forward with his W up. And Gen.G, as soon as that wears down, are going to jump in. And Ruler's going to hop the wall over here and go for a flank because they don't want to fight straight up front to back necessarily against this ball comp. So as we roll this out, you're going to watch Kog'Maw step forward with W on. He's going to hit some barrels to make sure the GP chain can't come through. He's going to hit one last barrel here. They see it's down and instantly they go, okay, it's time to go. Ruler hops the walls. You see Peanut completely ignore the Shyvana who has lost her ultimate and they dive onto the back line and instantly kill them. This is what makes Gen.G so good, is problem solving throughout the game and learning how to attack the front line.
I'm constantly amazed at AD carries finding flanks.
Flank Lucian.
The flank Lucian play. Also, very different look out of DRX, just compositionally, right? I mean, the idea of seeing Zeka on a Seraphine at this point in my life, when all I can attribute to him is Sylas and Akali, pretty wild. Venius, welcome back to the desk.
Thank you, man.
We missed you for a minute.
Yeah, I just took a quick break.
Yeah.
I've got to focus on these things.
Right.
Get ready for the analyst.
Venius gets tired easily.
I do get tired. I appreciate that. The big thing that I wanted to take away was, like, we already talked about the improvements that we have seen from DRX, and I think that it's something that we saw from them from the regular seasons as well when they are going up against a stronger opponent, taking a different approach. That for me has been the most impressive thing, the way in which they bring these creative drafts to the world stage, and they're not easy to execute either, but they're able to find these early game leads and they're able to execute upon them very well. So I'm excited to see what they can bring to the Rift today.
I'm such a big fan of the matchup we're about to see because after many historic championships at the Worlds, or disappointments rather, at World Championships, both Chovy and Deft have the opportunity to reach their first ever finals tonight as they face off in our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz.
In today's featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz, we have two players that are the reason their teams are still in this tournament. And yet, they have always been the bridesmaid, but never the bride. Deft's story is one of determination and tragedy.
Deft has poured his heart and soul into this game for a decade and has been denied so many times ever since he tasted that first semi-final.
It's been 2,942 days since you made the last semi-final.
He was the first player to attend Worlds with 5 different teams, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt the talent that resides in this man. And yet, he has been unable to make a final, let alone win a world title.
And he's gonna get the final. No, the inhibitor slides. It was in your hands, Deft. It was right in front of you in the end.
Another player whose career has been tripped up by tragedy is Chovy. After debuting a part of one of the most promising LCK rosters ever, they were torn apart through circumstances beyond their control. These two legends in their own right played together in Worlds 2021, falling short against T1.
Chovy's never gotten past quarters. Now on Gen.G, it really looks like the team that's helping him push himself.
Now, in a poetic twist of fate, they must face each other to finally break their unlucky streak.
Canyon locks down that first kill, but Chovy will answer, and he makes it a double. Realm Walk to deliver, but it's going to be interrupted. Showmaker sacrifices himself.
Scout has nowhere to go. Knocked up by Ash and shut down by Deft. Thank you very much for the double kill.
Now he's out of position, has to flash to get himself out, but it's another kill for Chovy. Showmaker once again extraordinarily low as the turret will be taken down. Bramble smash is amazing. It's another triple kill.
Viper attack stays alive. Double stun. Deft will not fall. Zeka will not allow it. Going with the quadra kill.
Only one of these two incredibly talented players will be able to make their first finals, and the other will fall back and start anew.
And we've talked a lot about Deft already in this pre-show, but I do want to focus on Chovy a bit. They brought up the Griffin point. You know, at least one player from Griffin will also be going to the finals. And so it's really cool because I know I mentioned previously how Deft is a player that people want to play with. Chovy is one of those players, and Chovy's transformation from his initial time on Griffin to now as one of the best mid laners in the world has just been amazing to watch.
And just how much people have kind of doubted him sometimes in the past because he hadn't won anything yet. He hadn't won LCK, hadn't won at Worlds too much. And so Dopa on his stream was talking about how like he felt bad anytime he saw this kind of like doubt go Chovy's way, because just watching him, you know how good he is, and it was just a matter of time before he started finding the success.
It's weird to see in a World semifinal a battle of brothers almost. You know, the fact that they were on DRX back in 2020, being eliminated in the quarterfinals as well, to then be reunited in the semifinals, but as opponents, like, there's a lot for both of these teams and for the players. And when you listen to them in interviews, they only ever speak warmly of each other.
Right.
And they just want to make sure that they can bring their best to today's game, because there's so much meaning and also a bit of heartbreak for both of them as they enter the Rift today.
Without a doubt. Two absolutely central figures to their two teams at this point. Also, interestingly, one of the few times we actually make our featured matchup players in different roles. But I think that speaks to your point, Vedius, about what this matchup means for each of them and each other. Now it's time to turn to our fans, though, and see what they think is going to take place on stage today. Will it be Gen.G? Will it be DRX with our MasterCard fan predictions? And it's a much closer vote than yesterday's. I'll remind everybody, it was a 75-25 split just yesterday, with the fans getting it right and moving their prediction rate up to 73.68%. But they are giving it to Gen.G, the LCK champions today, Vedius.
So I do wonder how much of this is the fact that Gen.G was pushed so much and there were some question marks around their group stage performance. The caveat I would give to fans is there's one thing to be pushed, there's another thing to be pushed by Canyon. And Canyon had an incredible quarterfinals that I think is not a true representative of how strong Gen.G really should be coming into today's semi.
Also, I think people just want Deft to win.
There's also that.
I was literally about to ask that. I was like, how much of that is just story?
I think people just want Deft to win.
Trying to will Deft to victory here, a guy who's been chasing it for so long. Mark, I want to continue our conversation, get some thoughts about where everyone stands on the matchup, but by going through a couple of those individual ones. Let's start in the mid lane, Chovy versus Zeka.
I absolutely want to talk about Zeka because this kid's 19 years old and has not been around too long. He was in the LPL for a little bit, didn't turn that many heads, came back to the LCK, and has been ramping up slowly for a little bit. By the end of the regular season and playoffs, people were like, he's good, and you would hear like whispers about like, oh, watch out for this kid, don't sleep on him at Worlds. They were not ready for him to dumpster last year's finals MVP, getting 4 solo kills in Game 5. He has been climbing, getting better. He's trying to become this god tier. No one would have called him one of the best mid laners in the world, but here he is. The difference is he's going up against Chovy today. Chovy is the god emperor of mid lane. He is omniscient, he is prescient, there is no matchup he doesn't know, there is no trade he doesn't see, and so for Zeka to do it against Chovy would be absolutely legendary.
And I think that's where a lot of questions are going to lie, because while Zeka has absolutely been a standout for his team in this tournament, most people are still going to isolate his pool and say he only has so many options to do that phenomenal work with. And Chovy, as you just mentioned, he knows them all. He knows all the matchups, he knows all the champions, so can he get that same kind of work done against a player like Chovy?
And I noticed you're highlighting something there. What are you highlighting?
Well, I'm just saying, so Chovy's laning is absolutely insane, but if there's one thing Zeka has in the current meta, it's the melee mid matchups, and that's what he's kind of rose to power on. This
pure unfettered aggression.
This path of ascendancy that he's kind of on is about being able to find solo kills and abuse other people who don't know the mid matchups as well.
When I think of these two players, I think of Chovy as this man in a suit, calm, calculated, everything is pristine, his desk is always organized, and he is the master of efficiency and optimization. When I see Zeka, I see him kicking in the door, wearing his jeans,
Kool-Aid
he's
man.
got his hoodie on, and he's just like, I'm ready to do whatever I gotta do to get the dub.
He's also got like 2 unnecessarily large chains dangling from his wrist.
And he's ready to throw them out at anyone that stands in his way. And I think that that's one of the crazy things, because when we look across previous world champions, people have been criticized for their champion pools before, but if the world meta enables it, why would you not take advantage of that? And right now, this is his meta.
Malzahar every game to a world championship? Please.
That's also why I think the bot lane picks for DRX have actually become so important, right? Because if you are forced to respond to these pushing bot lanes, in particular the Ashheimer, if you're forced to respond to that, then guess what? Zeka is going to get Sylas or Akali every single game. We only saw one of the EDG games where they actually did take that ban strategy of just taking those off the table. And he actually showed up on Azir and had a really strong performance there too.
And this is why I'm extremely excited about the bot lane matchup as well. It's Ruler versus Deft. Obviously, from a narrative perspective, there's a lot of reasons as to why this is so hype. Former AD carry versus current AD carry. But when we look at how they play, Ruler is considered, if not one of the best AD carry in the bot lane. He is phenomenally, mechanically talented, an incredible team fighter, but Deft has only continued to grow as the year has gone on.
Yeah, it's just so cool to see the difference in playstyle. You have the lowest jungle proximity versus the highest. This speaks to how Gen.G mostly plays through him in the early game for Ruler, where it's about the soul lanes a little bit for DRX, where they kind of leave BeryL and Deft just down there with their crazy Ash Heimerdinger, go push away, and we're not actually going to play through you that much.
Yeah, the jungle proximity is huge for me because of the bot lanes they picked, just like you said, because they can reliably like essentially play weak side, but with these really strong pushes in lane that still gives them jungle coverage and still gives them setups around Drake.
Yeah, Vedius, you had mentioned that maybe some people's reservations around Gen.G, if there are any coming out of that last series, is how much Canyon pushed them. But I think the question then becomes, is Pyosik capable of doing similar things that Canyon was able to do for the side of DRX?
Well, I think this is one of the big questions that we have, because what we saw from DRX in their quarterfinals was an ability to consistently get early leads against TDG. And a lot of that was off the back of Pyosik. And I know Emily, coming into this analyst desk prep, she was talking about how she wanted to highlight his improvements as an individual because of how talented he's grown. I think he's a large part of really enabling his players and setting up DRX for success in the early game.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Pyosik is someone who was kind of scouted off the ladder, highlighted as like, oh, this kid, even though he might be a one-trick by CB Max, to be able to be like, he has something. And he struggled with kind of a crisis of confidence, splitting time against Chuhan. Here we are seeing how Tahm Canyon kind of really got the better of Peanut in that series. I don't think Pyosik necessarily plays this style necessarily, but I do think he could take some notes from him and his early pathing to try to essentially cover his camps, especially if he's going on an invade, and working better with his lanes, because I think if there's anything I really want to highlight about Pyosik at this tournament, it's how much better he's actually looked playing with the lanes he has.
It's the story of DRX as a whole, I think, when you get into their history. It's just like they've gotten so much better in such a short period of time. I personally find this so cool about League of Legends is how quickly you can become good if you've put the time in. Like Kingen and Zeka never finished higher than 4th in any regional event, any of their playoffs. They were not this like world stomping team, and suddenly they're in semifinals because it's like right meta, we worked hard, we believe in ourselves, their confidence has grown, and just for these two soul laners to be so young and so unknown to now be doing this, I'm blown away.
And I'll put a neat little bow on this with you, Vedius, talking about the supports just real quick. You missed Shephius on the desk. He had a lot of thoughts about, you know, picks that could maybe warp the series, and I think the supports in this series could be the ones that define it. Obviously, people are thinking Singed, Lehends, but it could be anything, and you never know how that's going to open up options for the rest of the team.
Quite right. I think that we have to remember BeryL is world champion, world finalist. The man knows how to win games, and his creativity knows no bounds, but the same can be said for Lehends. I think they're going to be instrumental, but I also don't want to set any illusion. Gen.G are the heavy favorites coming into this semifinal, so DRX are going to have to show us something really creative, and that growth needs to continue if they want to stand a chance in today's best of 5.
Without a doubt. It's a massive best of 5 that stands before us, but the stage is set and the teams are just about ready to dive into it. But before we get down into the arena, with the horrific events of October 29th in Seoul, Korea being declared a national tragedy, we are going to take a moment of silence and respect in solidarity with all broadcasters and members of the LoL Esports community around the world. We ask that you join us as we remember the lives lost and the pain being felt by an entire nation as Korea enters a week of national mourning. We stand in support alongside the people of Korea and those mourning around the world as one community, as one voice, and with one heart. please join us in a moment of silence before we resume Worlds 2022.
초비는 항상 2인자란 쓴소리를 수없이 들었습니다. 라인전의 킹이었지만 대회의 킹이 되지 못했죠. 그에게 그리고 젠지에겐 엄청난 부담감이 있을 겁니다.
개인적으로 두려운 부분은 제가 저 자신한테 믿음이 부족할 때 그게 좀 두려울 것 같아요. 지금 제가 느끼는 이 두려움은 제 성장에 도움이 안 되는 것 같아서 해결하는 게 제일 나은 것 같아요.
제가 1999년부터 해온 수많은 e스포츠 중계 중 최고 단 한 경기를 뽑으라면 제 선택은 이번 DRX 대 EDG 8강 경기입니다.
And the Nexus is in his eyes, and he's gonna get. Oh, the inhibitor! The inhibitor is back up! No! The game was in your hands, Deft! It was right in front of you, and the inhibitor spawned!
오랜 기간 동안 앞으로 나아가지 못하고 이제 항상 머물러 있거나 좀 뒤로 가는 듯한 느낌을 많이 받았었는데
And New York erupts as Deft will not fall! Zeka will not allow it!
여기까지 오면서 사라진 것 같아요.
DRX 아무도 그들이 여기까지 오리란 상상도 하지 못했을 겁니다.
Nearly a kill and a scout! Needs to get the shot! Oh, the flash!
젠지는 EDG보다 훨씬 더 잘한다 생각하고 있어서 더 준비 열심히 해서 제카라는 이름을 잊지 못하게 만들어 드리겠습니다. 데프트 선수 인터뷰 때 우셨잖아요. 그 모습을 보고 저도 되게 울컥하더라고요. 어느 누가 언제 은퇴할지 모르는 나이가 됐는데 엄청난 서로 좋은 경기력을 보여줬으면 좋겠고 누가 이기든 응원했으면 좋겠습니다.
이 선수들의 정상결전이 시작됩니다. LCK의 새로운 황금 시대의 서막이 열립니다.
협경을 제 손으로 한국으로 보내게 되어서 유감스럽네요. 초비를 적팀으로 만났을 때 어떤 느낌이었는지 다시 기억나게 해줄게. Lehends is not over yet.
Welcome everyone from around the world to the State Farm Arena. Georgia, are you ready for one final battle on the road to San Francisco? Just one best of 5 stands between today's teams and a ticket to the finals. It's a David and Goliath face-off that will forge legacies and the final contender for the Summoners Cup.
On one side, the reigning LCK champions who once sat atop the world and are on the precipice of regaining that glory. And facing them are a squad that has gone the distance, fighting all the way from Mexico City on the road to San Francisco. Give it up for Gen.G and DRX! Starting from the top, facing former teammates and current rivals on his road to the title, it's Gen.G's Doran! And his opponent today, stepping on to the semifinal stage in his first ever Worlds appearance, making good on his name, it's Kingen! Roaming the jungle are two players that are the heartbeat of their teams. First, a pillar of League looking to etch his name into history. It's P9! Opposite him is a young gun ready to write a powerful legacy of his own. But will he hit the mark? Give it up for Pyosik! Looking at the mid lane, a player with performances so powerful, they inspire prayer. He'll take you to church, Gen.G's Chovy! Opposite him, a player that exploded onto the world stage and looking to make sure those prayers go unanswered. DRX's Zeka! Turning to the bot lane, one of the best AD carries in the world, looking to cement his legacy and reclaim his crown. World Champion Ruler! But his opponent has waited 8 years to return to the semi-final stage. A man who broke free of the past to claim the future. DRX's Deft! Backing up these teams are two of the most innovative players in their role. First up, a man who warps the meta and forces his opponents to find an answer. Gen.G's Lehends! And for DRX, a world champion who's risen to the occasion when his team needed him most. Give it up for BeryL! Today, one team will ascend to the championship stage, and the other will fall just short of the finish line. Atlanta, let me hear you make some noise for your semi-finalists, Gen.G and DRX!
Man, do I love a good introduction before a best of 5. Thank you very much, Dash. 10 players on the stage, coaches soon to join them. I'm Dracos, this is Cadril. We're going to be bringing you the cast all day long, and I'm really just looking for 5 games.
Yeah, me too. The stage is even shaking when the music and such and all the voice and hype's coming through. So we're hyped. Everyone in the arena is hyped. It's going to be an incredible matchup. We're hoping for 5 games, but it looks like right now Gen.G are the favorites.
And we heard yesterday a little bit of the momentum for DRX. You see how strong the bonds are between the players. They've certainly surpassed every ceiling that has been labeled upon them in the past. Maybe they can do it again, but when you look at Gen.G, it's not explosive success, it's consistent success. When your team is built around names like Chovy and Ruler, you know every single game is going to be a good one.
Probably the 2 most reliable carries in the world, right? They have such a high skill ceiling as well, but we're already straight into the draft. And there goes BeryL's hybriding her off the get-go. Yumi's taken away, so they don't want to deal with Lehends' Yumi. As much as he's such a good player at countering the Yumi with the Singe and such, he's also one of the best Yumi players in the world, I think, too. There's the Akali ban. Sylas is the question. Gen.G on blue side could choose not to ban Sylas and first pick it away from Zeka, and we'll see what he has as an answer. Lucian taken away, of course. Ruler Lehends probably the best Lucian Nami as well in the world. There's a lot of fantastic players here on specific champs, and there's the Aatrox ban.
Absolutely. The 2 big questions coming into this series were, would Zeka get one of his signature picks thus far, and what will the bot lane meta look like? Already Gen.G trying to solve a bit of that puzzle by taking the Heimer, and of course DRX responding with the Lucian and the Yumi. How wacky is the bot lane gonna get?
Caitlyn is still up, and Caitlyn's a champ that's often banned against Deft. I wonder if that's something that DRX will look into on the 1-2. We saw it with Philios, Lulu, and Lucian Nami yesterday. This last ban will tell it all, but they're gonna take away the Caitlyn. They don't want Ruler to have it. Maybe they don't have a confident enough counter into it. So now you have to imagine Aphelios Prio is very high up, but there's the Sylas pick denial we expected. Zeka's gonna have to find something to match it with. We've seen his Azir and Orianna. Control mages, he looks good on.
Yep.
But on these mages like bruiser mages like Sylas and Akali, he looks world class on.
And they highlighted it on the desk. They looked back a while to the Seraphine game he played previously, and while it was still a fantastic individual performance, we know that this team looks so much stronger, so much more in control when he is on a playmaker in the mid lane, and that certainly is a playmaker, certainly an explosive one that Chovy is no stranger to, as he has pulled down the mid lane once already, but instead, perhaps, the more conservative choice, Azir, now locked in.
Gonna go back to comfort there. So they've got the Sejuani flex, the Azir into the Sylas. Graves is the champion that we overlooked a little bit, but this isn't a champion that stands out to us as these are the 2 junglers that would take it. You know, Canyon, Kanavi would be the players that would instantly lock that champion. A little bit of a cane hover there to shout Canyon out. Viego, another really powerful carry jungle in the current meta. And they're going to round it out with Varus. I expect DRX here. They could just select a full top side here, picking their jungler to match the Viego. Something like Graves could work really well. But with the Sejuani, you really want a meaty jungler. So picking AD carry here is also an option.
Debating. Scrolling through the options, it is going to be the Camille. Strong pick, certainly when you can back it up with double bans as well. A lot of the counters can just be taken off the board. Kingen, notorious carry player, not necessarily always getting the attention in draft, but this time around they're willing to sacrifice bot lane on the side of DRX just to make sure that he has a comfortable matchup, and already the Renekton taken off the board.
I wonder if they ban away Jax. Doran doesn't really have any Jax games in summer. GP could be a good ban depending on what AD carry they're looking for. If they're looking for something immobile, but they're actually just going to leave a Renekton ban and then start the target towards bot lane. Renata's so powerful. We saw it from T1 yesterday, the Varus Renata bot side. Ashe taken away from Deft. His options getting slimmer and slimmer here. Aphelios still up. Could be a fallback for him, but we've seen a plethora of champions from Deft. They're not afraid to play things like Ezreal Karma. We've seen his MF, we've seen his Tristana, we've seen his Draven. Even though he had not had a single win on it back against the wall, he was confident enough to pull it out. So I think DRX have a lot of champions to choose from. There's the Karma ban to stop the Ezreal Karma push into this Varus.
And I like it because they've taken away 2 of the champions who are so good at taking lane priority. Varus, notoriously strong early game, Karma and Ashe. 2 of the champions that really can contest him now. We're going to see the Misfortune locked in. This champion, in the hands of most of this tournament, has looked lackluster
Ruler himself alongside Lehends pulling it out and looking clean against down 1 Kia last week. We'll see if Deft can repeat some of that success and what the pairing is going to be alongside BeryL.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going into the realm of melee supports here. Lulu is up, but I'm not sure if they want to go for something like the Varus Lulu. We saw how vulnerable Lulu can be against champions like Camille with the full dive. Varus Tahm Kench is a much better option to keep your Varus safe against the Camille, so your support is a lot more beefy and a lot less likely to get picked off. Now it's just a case of top lane. Does he go for something like the GP? Jax is a good pick, Fiora is a good pick, but these aren't really the champions that we've seen out of Doran. We've mostly seen, you know, the likes of Camille and Renekton and Maokai and Gnar, but he is going to be confident enough to lock the Fiora in. I think that's his first Fiora game of summer.
And when we talk about Doran, we talk so often about team play and team fighting. His laning phase is solid, yes, but there we are. Soraka going to be the call out here against the Tahm Kench. The silence incredibly powerful. And again, more curveballs being thrown by the DRX bottom lane.
Oh, you love to see it going for the Soraka there. Normally in the Tahm Kench lanes, I see the Varus Tahm actually get pushed into the Soraka, but the Soraka will be so powerful in keeping the front line alive. And DRX have a little bit of dive with, of course, the Camille Sejuani. And with the Camille ult, we saw yesterday from T1, you could pick Nami and Lucian with the Camille. And as the Camille would ult, the Nami ult would come over the top of that. Here you've got an MF ult and a Soraka silence that can come over the top of that as well. So they don't have as much dive to follow up, but they have the range of abilities and ultimates to help Kingen out when he singles out that one target.
And that is an alpaca in the audience. Pleasure to see you, sir. Don't know how you got out of the petting zoo, but you're more than welcome here. Of course, in this first game, lane phase is going to be massive because we really need to see if some of those explosive discrepancies are going to show themselves. Peanut, of course, struggled against Canyon, but Canyon, best in the world. We're going to have to see if Pyosik is up to the task to match him in this game. Peanut, notorious for creative early game pathing. If he can find an angle somewhere on the map, he will build a lead for the team.
He definitely will, and he's going to have to find Pyosik. I think Pyosik will be hovering on the top side of the map. Needs to cover bots here to get push-outs for the Soraka. I think their 3v3 will be innately weaker, but the Camille Sejuani is such a strong pairing. The problem is the Fiora will innately outscale the Camille in isolation, so they do need to focus topside. And of course, we saw that Deft is the AD carry with the lowest jungle proximity in the entire tournament, and Ruler is first. So we expect Pyosik to be playing around the mid-top side. Has the Sejuani, a lot stronger at 6 to help the Azir out, but double AP in the mid-jungle will make it so Chovy's life is a little bit easier. But here we are, Game 1. Gen.G DRX Semifinals.
Loving the crowd here in Atlanta. Every game significant. Remember, DRX have not beaten Gen.G this year. It's about small steps. DRX have yet to falter, finding the reverse sweep, finding their way out of every single stage. We'll see if they can do that again today. But tracking the early game, again, early pathing, early impact in these lanes is going to be so important as we move on. I think more often than not, we're very used to talking about mid and bot lane when you look at these two teams. But with the Camille locked in, with the potential for Sejuani to go topside, we're also going to have to pay some attention to Kingen and Doran as well.
Definitely are. I think topside is going to be the majority of the focus. Oftentimes when you're a jungler and you don't have many options in lanes, I mean, Peanut's right here, bot lane is not a great option, a little bit of setup. But topside, you need to cover your Fiora. In the 2v2 you might lose, but you need to make sure at least you're around to stop any kind of pushing out waves, to set up ganks, any kind of dives if Camille gets good wave states. So both junglers will path towards the top side of the map. There's the pink ward level 1 place down there from Pyosik, I believe it was, in the river, just to make sure there's no level 2, level 3 shenanigans towards mid onto Zeka. There's also a ward on the other side of the entrance, so Zeka will have a lot of information to work with. And bot push will be contested. Oftentimes you see Tahm Kench get the stacks to actually get the push in, so that's why, despite being in a range disadvantage, they can start to push the first couple of waves.
And that's why early vision can be so incredibly crucial, just getting control of those bot lane brushes, stopping Tahm Kench from using his ludicrously high base stats, as we saw Keria do so well earlier in the tournament. For now, though, a relatively quiet laning phase. Zeka getting level 2 first, big health advantage over Chovy. For now, just a bit of a pressure advantage, might be able to deny a few CS here. On the bottom side, of course, Deft and BeryL doing everything they can to get level 2 first.
Really good trades there by Zeka. Pyosik will be first to level 3. He's done Blue Grump Wolf, so he'll be level 3 moving into the top side if he wants to look for invades, but top wave's not in a great state, and he doesn't have information on the enemy jungler, so we're probably expecting full clears from both sides here. But mid is under pressure. That pink ward could pay dividends there if Peanut went into bot river and tried to gank Zeka, but Zeka has so much information so that he can trade so aggressively onto Chovy and start to queue forward. That's the thing with the Azir. The second you queue forwards, majority of your escape is gone.
Certainly is. Something we'll have to track, of course, now that level 3 is here as well, has access to the shifting sands, the E, allow him to get back out to safety for the most part, but would want to extend that dash if necessary. Doran and Lehends clearing out what they can while they wait for the wave to crash, knowing they're not really in a position to contest right at this moment. Of course, you can see Deft not opting for a second combat sum, opting instead to take the cleanse. Once level 6 comes around for Ruler, it's going to be so much harder for DRX to weather the storm in the bottom lane.
A little bit more setup then, isn't there? So Peanut can pay a visit. Right now he's going for a full clear. Looks like Pyosik's going to focus on his Krug, so he'll get to level 4, whereas Peanut wants to secure this early crab. Now that does mean if Pyosik bases and goes to bot side, he should be able to trade. Otherwise, Peanut, if he has the information, will look to double crab. So level up comes through. What's Pyosik's decision here? Does he base? Does he move towards mid? Does he move towards top? Looks like he's going to queue over the wall here, but the crab's already gone.
Looking for the angle.
But he is being sneaky here. They didn't spot him with the sweeper plant. This is an amazing position for the Sejuani. If he can just wait a little bit, hug this wall, and sneak up the side here, they could have setup onto Doran.
They're not gonna
Oh
spot
my
him.
god!
Oh! No, they spot him! Okay, wait, did they back up? Do they know? Yes, they do. Doran walking away.
Yeah, pings are coming down. Splinter Cell failed this time around, but Doran walked up for the creep.
Stepping forward, keep your eyes on the parry. That's going to be everything. The riposte is going to go. Initially getting locked up. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the stacks. Waiting it out. They're going to lock up Doran now, but they don't have the follow-up. Now Peanut into the thick of it. 3 stacks on him. 4th. Not quite going to come out. DRX backing away, top lane and jungle matching each other.
Really good patience there from Kingen. He actually uses the hook shot to go in front of Doran, intentionally missing him, knowing that he will riposte, so he actually gets distance in front of him to force his flash. Wave will crash, Kingen will get a good base, and that could have backfired incredibly quickly if the ward wasn't placed in river and just spotted out Pyosik at the last second of it. Bot crab is still up though, and Pyosik knows it. He's gone for the boots early, and he's trying to run down there to pick that up as quickly as possible. TP back from every solo laner right now so far, except for Kingen, who still needs to take that base. Deft and Ruler coming out of base as well.
Tracking the itemization as well. Early Sheen for Fiora. No effective combat stats, but does have the passive. Has that extra damage to come through in the trades. See what DRX can do with that advantage on the top side of the map. Having that flash down, having that TP down. And while the TPs will be traded, we're looking at a 5-minute window where Doran's going to feel much more vulnerable, but it is one they have to capitalize on. It's unrealized advantage yet.
It is, and Kingen will take that base. 2v2 will always be in favor of the Camille Sejuani as long as neither of them makes the mistake of fighting into the Fiora riposte. You know, Sejuani needs to time her E so that Fiora can't W it with range, and Camille can never use her hookshot into the Fiora if it's up. Patience is key when you're playing against Fiora, so DRX showing it already. Bot's wave will push in there. DRX had a small window for Drake if they had bot push, but they don't right now, so abandoning that call. Pyosik's just going to go for another full clear towards top side. The closer he gets to level 6, the easier it is to make these plays.
Certainly the case, and you can see on the early backs, Ruler opting instead of going for something like Sustain to match out the Bamso from the side of Deft, opting for triple longsword, just extra AD, trying to push more of the individual advantage in trades. Varus, notoriously super oppressive, courtesy of the slow, the extra damage coming through on the procs as well.
Looking at pings here, I think DRX were scared of some kind of top dive. The wave was crashing and there was a lot of assistance pings, so Pyosik's around. Kingen doesn't have to sweat too much, and Doran will take a base on that crashing wave. You can see these things happen where you get mid-push, you go into fog of war on one side, and all of a sudden that side lane is incredibly scared. But in actual essence, what you're doing is just basing anyway. So that's just a pressure point that you can use to keep your base timers up, and that'll help Doran get a base lead onto Kingen. Bot lane trading a little bit. Of course, the Soraka has really good sustain the more Qs she lands. I think he might be maxing Q there, the amount of damage that just did.
Definitely good to have. Peanut now fishing for some sort of play here, just on the bottom side. Ruler coming up as well. Chovy with a stolen Azir off. If Pyosik's in the area, that's a massive man advantage for the side of Gen.G if they do want to go for this play. Peanut now stepping forward. Zeka realizing it is time to get out, but it's Pyosik now who has been caught. Trying to step forward, trying to body block the escape. Stun going to come in, but will not find purchase there. Failing on the riposte big. Good patience again from Pyosik.
And that's the beauty of phase rush on the Sejuani, especially when the enemy team has so many melee champs. I'll hold my breath for a second here because Ruler.
The root locked up. That's the root. BeryL from the bush, and the bananas are coming in. That's going to be a flash out and over the wall.
Oh, double summoners blown there from Ruler. Tried to get a couple of those creeps trade onto Deft, but BeryL being sneaky Soraka in the bush finds the silence and root. Deft not in range to follow up. But that's another target for DRX. These side lanes don't have flashes. They just need to bring a numbers advantage and force it, or look for an objective. You know, Herald's up in 30 seconds. If they want to force a 5v5, or if they want to force this Drake 5v5, then they can easily do so, because the Sejuani will be getting closer and closer to that level 6 mark, and you can always easily select a target in fight. There it is, the level up to Pyosik.
And if you look at this game from DRX's perspective, a lot of small advantages going over to them, and now they're going to try to capitalize on them. Lehends waiting in the brush, Pyosik now going in. This should be an easy kill. There's just everybody in the bot lane. Surprise, baby! That's a Camille and first blood for DRX.
That was such a good play by Kingen. He got helped out by Pyosik in the 2v2 top side to force Doran's flash. The wave crashed, Doran had to catch it and base and TP back. Kingen could run back to that lane. So what he does then is he pays his bot side back by ganking down there and then TPing back up. Problem is though is, oh, I think he stole it. Did he just take that one away from Pyosik?
Oh man.
He did. That hurts.
I mean, he's the ruler for a reason.
He is.
The man don't miss.
The man don't miss. That's a crab over to Ruler. Pyosik's gonna start up the dragon. It's Fiora, I think.
Soloing the Herald.
Yeah, soloing the Herald here, Doran, knowing that they need to cross map quickly.
And remember that Camille is just coming up top lane to catch this massive wave. There's still a CS difference, so it was not without cost. The Kingen went down to the bottom lane that he got that first blood, but it's a trade objective for Ruler. No,
not again.
You can't do this to them.
No, he has a 900 damage smite. He can't steal this.
There's Varus Q does a lot of damage. Charge? Okay. All right.
Doesn't have the damage. Good smite. Pyosik being safe, and it's a trade of neutrals. Herald over to Gen.G, Dragon over to DRX. Question is, where will they use this Herald? You have to expect it to be topside. Peanut doing a little bit of counter jungling. Red buff's up. Pyosik will spot him, but there's a ward there, so Peanut knows he's around. Chovy has mid push.
Also difficult. The red buff is up and available. Similarly, the empowered recall allows him to get out quite quickly.
Oh, this is one of those moments where you have to find him. You know he's in your jungle somewhere, but the actual fact he's based with the Herald, so Pyosik will check his camps and make sure he's safe, and we'll clear those up.
This is the second time you've highlighted that, but the absence of information, what could be waiting for you in the fog of war, something that always has to be respected on either side. Chovy getting spotted as he returns to mid, getting that information over to Zeka, and as we take stock of the lane state, 10 CS lead on the top side of the map. Bot lane very much in favor of Deft on the back of some early lane pressure as well as that positive sum trade. So overall, things going pretty well right now.
Oh, that was
side of DRX.
That was really smart from Deft. He knew Ruler was hugging the wall, so he couldn't go up, so he actually ulted right through the wave in his face, knowing the only way he could run is backwards. So he used the E first to slow him. Gets a really good trade and takes a base, and now he'll run back to lane as quick as possible with that 20 CS lead and keep up the pressure. Still no summoners on that bot side. 3 minutes, 40 seconds away from the dragon, and we expect the game to be slow like this because on one side, DRX have a fantastic scaling with Azir and Soraka and things like this. Really good team fight with MF. And Gen.G want to scale because they're playing safe with Varus, Tahm, and the Fiora will do well into the Fiora the later the game the later the game goes.
Certainly the case. And I like what we're seeing as well from Deft in terms of itemization. Early BT has been super popular, allows you to mitigate a lot of trading as well as just raw AD for your ultimate. But most importantly, the dreamy life of any MF main is you just don't have to buy boots. Feels good. Just strut your way back to lane, although could come to haunt him depending on how aggressive Lehends wants to get.
Deft's been holding this freeze here for so long. BeryL gonna stop Chovy's base, and it just makes it so that Gen.G's ruler feels bot lane, feels so exposed when they walk up to try and push out these waves and crash them. Especially given that Peanut's hovering top the majority of the time. But I think what DRX are saying now is they want a Herald somewhere and we need to match it. So BeryL's looking for information through the map. Because Deft's freezing bot here, Ruler says we're not going to go back down there. We're going to run towards the top side, go 4-man here, and likely place the Herald down. So DRX are ready to respond, ready to cover. We'll see what Zeka's movement is here, because he could TP up this tower to help the defense. We'll see what Deft does as well. He's going to hold the freeze, he's going to fast push. Peanut
stepping forward. Peanut, the patience here, waiting till he's got backup so they cannot collapse on him. Does not overplay his hand. Doran and Ruler now stepping forward. DRX doing what they can to clear the wave for now. Certainly do not have the best tools to stop this push from happening.
This is a really good map read here from DRX. They just stopped the Herald in its tracks. They can't place it now, Gen.G. It's an even numbers, and Chovy's gone towards bot with no unleashed TP, meaning Zeka has the mid push. But they need to force something. The second this wave dies, that's it. The play's off, and they have 2 minutes left for plates.
And a reminder that so many creeps are dying. So much money that Gen.G could have had is dying on that bottom side of the map, is dying in this mid lane as we see Chovy return back. So DRX being there not only stops the Herald, but takes so much potential income away from the side of Gen.G.
Might just have to be a case of Peanut placing it either top or mid to get gold for himself. But eventually DRX will have to back off of this top side because Deft is still bot. So if they just keep rinse and repeating, DRX will back away. And now with this wave coming in, the Herald will likely be put down. The golds will be funneled over to Ruler, who's struggling. It's interesting that Gen.G don't give the gold to Doran. Doran's ahead and he's going to outscale. Ruler is behind. Let's give him as much gold as possible.
And that's just the power of the nameplate. It's not about the champion, it's about the player. In this case, gold going to be split a little bit here. Deft on the bottom side walking away from the Fiora. Pyosik taking a decent amount of poke, and Gen.G doing what they can to keep the siege up. Plates are still going to be up for another minute. Right now, the gold within touching distance, 200 gold to the Ocean Drake on the side of DRX, really the only difference.
Deft has no flash, he has to be careful.
Deft walking away, the cleanse. Doran, is he just going to walk him down the heel? Now coming in from the Soraka, is it going to be enough? He's trying to pinch him. Oh! The 1-for-1? Doran, no! How does he do it? He makes it out even in the face of the heel from BeryL.
With the Sunderer spike, Deft thought that he was safe because of the Soraka ult. Maybe he thought he could bait Doran in, but the healing from Grasp and Sunderer and the kill was enough to make it so he would live through that last tower shot. Deft overstepping a little bit. Not sure about the limits there on the 1v1 with the Soraka ult, and now that means that Ruler can step forwards here and look for this tower. Big gold swing over to Gen.G.
Gen.G, no fear to step forward here, and we talk about the 2v2 matchup. We forgot about BeryL being top lane and Deft being bottom, and well punished from the side of Gen.G. Again, if DRX had continued to hold that, it could have gotten very bad very quickly, but Doran playing this fantastically.
Yeah, Deft, no flash here, just trying to kite out Doran. And no, this is where he had to flash initially, so he was scared of Doran proccing the vitals. And then he steps up for the wave, and Doran just goes for the flash Q. Look where that vital is, it's in the perfect spot. Cleanses away from what he expects to be the slow, pops the W, gets the Soraka ult, and then Doran manages to get the kill with the grasp, with the Sunderer, with the level up. It's just enough to make it a 1-for-0.
And credit to Doran for playing that well, but also 3 back-to-back very fortunate vital procs in terms of location. First one to the right, next one in front of him, the third one behind as he's coming around the tower as well. So not only was it well executed, but the RNG going in his favor too, as DRX now trying to bully their way in. They've got the 1-item spike for Deft. He's got his ulti up and available. This is going to be tough for Gen.G to contest.
No TP on Doran, so he'll be very late to this fight. DRX want to get this down as quick as possible. Can Peanut steal? Will DRX engage? The Tahm Kench ult is crucial against the Sejuani, but Zeka can look to shuffle.
Yep, still in the area. They're ready to flip this on the 50-50. He can go unstoppable over the wall if he needs to. Chovy. Can he find something? Varus ult is going to be big. Peanut now locked up, but that's the Tahm Kench ultimate coming in. Kingen still in the pit. Chovy still in the pit. Looking to get it. He's going to lock it down. That's Fiddler now going in. Zeka fishing, looking for an opportunity. The grand challenge issue. That's the 2-man from Lehends. The follow-up now from Gen.G. They will take their kills and walk away happy.
DRX try to take the 5v5. Yes, they get the dragon, but they overstep, and Gen.G punish and pounce onto them. Both carries full. We'll see what they can get off the back of this. Kingen is hovering around on this bot side. Pyosik is behind him. Soraka ult is up in around 5 to 10 seconds if they want to opt into this 2v2.
It's going to get bad very quickly. The hook shot into the wall dive will make it out. Doing what he can to hold on to the tower, but again, good news for DRX. They are able to grab that dragon, but giving more kills over, certainly not going to feel good. And certainly when the follow-up is second Herald to the side of Gen.G, it's not looking quite as positive as it once did.
Tools now for Gen.G to work with. We'll look at this one again because I think the Varus ult comes out here onto Pyosik, so he can't hit the dragon, so he decides to ult onto Peanut, who gets the ultimate from Tahm Kench. Now the fight slows down a bit, but then Zeka tries to make it an explosive one. So the dragon goes over to Pyosik, but let's keep our eyes on the Azir here. He goes for Peanut and tries to flash predict, but he actually knocks him away rather than towards his team. I wonder if he could have pushed him into DRX. They could have picked up that kill. Chovy arrives, Doran arrives, and with the gap closed, DRX have no way out.
And you can see in theory how much value you can get out of DRX's composition when you can take out 1 or 2 members when a fight begins. But if you fumble some of those major cooldowns, it is so easy for Lehends, for Chovy, for Doran, Peanut, for all of the members of this team, this lineup, to turn on you in an instant.
This is why Gen.G has just been so successful throughout the year. 50 wins and 9 losses, something along those lines after the quarterfinals since the start of Summer Split. Their carries are just absolute rocks. Look at Chovy CS right now. He's up 20 over Zeka despite losing the push. Was juggling mid and bot waves. Ruder fell behind a little bit, but Gen.G know exactly how to get him back in the game. Of course, he has #1 jungle proximity. Peanut always hovering around his AD carry. Here comes the second Herald onto this mid tower. Deft doesn't have the MF ult for the next 3 or 4 seconds, so he can't use it.
Breaking mid lane. Are they going to push for the second charge here?
MF ult's up now.
They get that out before any other objectives are up. Feel pretty good. Just going to be the charge for now. A bit more poke, a bit more damage. Chovy now retreating. It's going to be another Cloud Drake. Shout out to our boy Atlas.
Cloud Soul indeed, yeah. It's roughly a 4k gold lead here for Gen.G. DRX, the only saving grace is they have 2 dragons under their belt, but the Cloud Soul is not a great combat soul to have. You would much rather have something like the Infernal or the Hex deck. But it's still a soul, and they'll try to keep focusing on these dragon stacks. Problem is they have is
Zeka on a side lane is really, really exposed. He has no tower next to him. Yes, he has his passive that he can put down right now, but if he doesn't have his jungler hopping around, he's a very easy target for Gen.G. If they just push in mid and move towards top, Lehends is already on the way up. Peanuts right behind him. They have TP on Kingen and a Soraka ult to keep him alive, but this will always be a pressure point for Gen.G playing on 2 lanes.
And with Pyosik shadowing on the bottom side, maybe hoping to find a pick, it just means that the entirety of the top side jungle is off limits. Doran gonna find the parry, now dashing out to safety. What's he gonna get? Grand challenge, looking for multiple marks. Now gonna get locked up in the Hextech, although Mayhem should just fall here. A little bit more healing. Is it going to be enough? Needs to dash forward, but no, that's the shutdown. Hit him with the flail and walk away.
Big shutdown now over to DRX. It's a shame it didn't go onto King, and that'll sting because it went onto their Sejuani, but a kill's a kill. They actually saved the mid tier 2 with the MF ult, but I think Gen.G can stick around. Chovy's actually just gonna push out top and TP down here to keep the tower alive, so it's a kill, but it's not an objective. Need a little bit more than that, DRX, but they have to send 2 members to kill this Fiora. The Camille will not win 1v1 with the Fiora being this far ahead. So, desperation moves on numbers advantage, but it's their only real way to find these plays.
Certainly is a tricky map state. It's only gonna get harder as Gen.G holding on to this 3K gold lead. And as you highlighted earlier, Cloud Soul is going to be important. You got an MF on your team, you love to have those ultis. It's a similar story for Soraka, but it's not infernal. It's not something that could offer you much more effective combat stats. Hopefully outvalue some of the champions on the opposite side. So for now, a brief period of quiet before the next dragon. 1 minute away, 1:30 on the Baron. Neither of these teams so far ahead that they can just start a Baron up, so a quieter mid game here. And I think this is the nature of game 1s and best of 5 K-Drills. We so often see game 1 a testing ground. Games 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you're gonna talk about, often much more explosive, much more bloody, but game 1 often really about testing your metal, poking, looking for weaknesses, trying to find those avenues and angles. Gen.G take control of mid.
Yeah, T1, of course, losing that game yesterday in game 1, but then bouncing back as the series progresses is a good example of that. So what DRX have done right now on the map is they've actually sent Kingen towards top. They know that bot side is a liability and they can't stick around there for too long, and Zeka will never get this top push, so they said, let's just cross map. Let's just force a tier 2 top while they go towards a dragon, and we'll race them on side lanes to trade gold. It's always good to trade gold when you're behind, and when you're ahead, you always want to trade to your own benefit, but now it's 1-for-1 in towers so far. It might be 2-for-2, but Doran has flash. He's playing a very confident next to Lehends.
Really want to get this kill, but of course the Tahm Kench being there stops it in its track. It's going to be tower for tower now match. DRX trying really hard to overload top side. They will get the tower trade, but very little else past that.
The losing play for this would be you would actually give up the dragon, but DRX, seeing Lehends and Doran up towards that top side, they say, well, we'll just run towards mid here as 5, push this wave in, and I expect them to go towards bot side or decide to back away and give up this dragon, but no, they're staying around looking for this mid tower. Gen.G, Chovy doesn't have the TP, so he can't look to flank them. They are going to move into this bot side river. They are going to take out a little bit of this vision, but they just got a lot of gold in their back pockets and they haven't spent it, so opting into a fight is very dangerous. Giving Gen.G just 1 dragon at 20 minutes is not that much of a pain.
And going to be very difficult to force that fight, especially when Chovy already at 2 items. Shadow Flame as well as the Everfrost here. Going to be a very difficult man to lock down and to shut down in these fights. Doran just clearing out vision, gets that top wave pushed in, and the map state returns to normalcy. So Gen.G realizing that DRX have backed away, knowing that they are stronger in the fight, will take the free dragon.
It's been a consistent 4,000 gold lead roughly for Gen.G over the last 3 or 4 minutes. They're holding on to it. It's very hard for DRX to find plays. Doran is their best target, but Chovy's constantly pushing out sides and just disappearing into fog of war. Here comes the top pressure again for DRX. The benefit of this is if you commit numbers top for pressure, then of course you get vision around Baron, which will help you slow the game down. Peanut finds Pyosik. Zeka's looking for this blue buff. Chovy is on the way. This could be dangerous if they overstay for too long. Will Zeka get it? Yes, he will. And they will get out. Deft just farming up. Kingen was hovering around, but he'll go back towards the bot side now. So DRX trying to get as much shallow vision on this top side as possible, putting down some pinks, buying time for this Azir.
Scaling, scaling, scaling. Zeka, 1.5 items. Now going to be 2 as he backs and finishes the BeryL Anomicon. Grabs an extra Amp Tome as well, but definitely not full on late game Azir status quite yet in the game.
The Azir is really far behind, isn't he? Just bought the Morello now, so that'll help out a little bit, but needs a lot more damage. Completing that Morello doesn't give you that much of a power spike. The Azir really wants to... I think he was looking for a shuffle there, Zeka, or some kind of WE to get closer with his Q to actually chunk Peanut out, but he needs to get a Rabadons as quick as possible. Build up to that late game Azir threat. Now they're going to contest some mid waves here. DRX will get the push out because Gen.G are showing both their solo laners on side, so TP actually coming in from Chovy. Maybe he was scared they were going to force that tower.
There's the potential of the DRX composition. That is the strength of Sejuani that we highlighted earlier on, as well as the Camille. The reliable engage tools certainly are there for DRX, and while Lehends is around, can mitigate some of it, they always have to be careful, they always have to give that respect, but you can see Gen.G have not struggled to give that respect. They have not misstepped, they have not given anything away, and the gold lead does just continue to grow as they keep picking up these side waves, as they keep farming more, pushing their vision out. Soon, I expect, are gonna start looking to contest the Baron.
I think Vedius was touching on the desk how DRX don't often draft this traditional form of engage, and the game that they have done it with the Sejuani, there's a Tahm Kench on the other side, right? So the second the Sejuani ult lands, that's an eat target, and then they disengage, and the fight continues, so you lose that engage quite quickly. Gen.G sweeping out this top side. It's very hard for them to start up the Baron. Of course, DRX have double TP, and they can easily walk into this pit. There's no real great turn for Gen.G that actually merits a Baron start. DRX, I guess they could sneak a Baron over the wall with the Azir and Sejuani, but Gen.G will never allow that to happen. And it looks like it might just be a slow dragon stacking game. Gen.G can't really overforce, and DRX have to commit 2 numbers to make this play happen. The only danger of this is losing Nash, but Doran will see him, and he'll back away.
Kingen obviously at the point in the game where you start to shred through those towers. Doran for now, confident staying under this tier 1. You can see why, because just to the left of your screen is Lehends now walking in, and that's the cue for DRX to hightail it out of there.
So the reason DRX are even looking for that play in the first place is because they know Chovy doesn't have TP. They're trying to use that to their advantage by trying to force a 2-man play onto Doran, knowing that Peanut and Chovy cannot respond, but it's Lehends who's been covering these side lanes on Tahm Kench because he knows Ruler is safe on these mid waves. And Gen.G are happy to slow the game down as well. They're incredibly good scaling too, and they control the game right now. There's no real threat of that Soul. They took away the 3rd one, and it's just a matter of time before Gen.G overcommit on this top side, push out top, start forcing a Baron as Doran's pushing in bot, and you have to make a choice. Do you stop Doran with your jungle top, or do you give up the Baron? And of course, DRX will always try to fight the Baron, but Gen.G need to hit towards that 3-item spike before they can force it.
BeryL checking the brush there with silence, getting what information he can as Chovy retreats back in the safety of his own side of the map. And again, Casual, you highlighted it so well, but it is just looking, fishing for any opportunity, trying to find these pockets of vision, hoping that that control ward won't be there the second time around, trying to find picks to lead to greater advantages or objectives. Because again, as long as neither team feels confident enough to just force start the Baron, it's going to be about playing for the next dragon. It's going to be about playing for these side lanes, finding these objectives. DRX obviously very easy for them to look at that tier 1 in the bottom lane as the next target in their eyes.
And let's not forget, of course, DRX are 0-8 against Gen.G this year. 0-12 overall, but they've never beaten Gen.G once this year in the best of 3s. And there's often been games like in the first round of summer regular season where they're playing Kog'Maw, Seraphine, Lulu, and they're ahead. They have Ocean Soul, they're up 5 big gold or something, and then they throw the game away around Elder Dragons. So DRX have always struggled. Gen.G is almost like their kryptonite at times in the regular season. 4 times they played a best of 3, 8 games won for Gen.G. DRX now controlling this top side, fighting back, trying to get some kind of vision. Gen.G quick to respond. Ruler's on red buff though, so they have to be a bit slow before they walk in. Peanut paying respect as he waits for his World Championship AD carry to step up and be behind him on that 3-item spike. Now they'll start to move forward. You expect Gen.G will start to push DRX back.
They see an opportunity, they want to get it because Deft is waiting over the wall, but keep your eyes on the ultimate. It could be big, but it is not enough. Leaping in now, Chovy diving into the back line, taking the ultimate away from Kingen and finding the kill. Just like that, Gen.G see their opportunity, and they're right onto the Baron.
Ruler arrives, and in a blink of an eye, he starts to fight onto Pyosik. Actually gets the kill in the roots, so Pyosik can't even respond, do anything at all. Chovy takes away the Camille ult, E-Flash ult on top of BeryL. He has no way out, and Gen.G, with that one fight, now have a Baron in their hands. TP coming in here from Chovy. They want to force this mid push so they can secure the dragon as well. They don't want DRX to get absolutely anything. Zeka was hovering around that dragon pit, trying to trade it as an objective, try and find some kind of consolation prize, but now with this 1-3-1, Gen.G will start to run away with it.
And you can see why Gen.G are so confident to keep scaling into this game when they're coming in from multiple angles, when Deft is not there, when the DRX do not have that strong front-to-back team fight, they just get picked to pieces.
So he's rooted into a stun. I think it was the repulse from Fiora, instantly get the kill, or the Viego W, but there's Chovy with the stolen Hextech ultimatum, just dashes forwards, flashes on the Soraka. He knows that the Soraka is a key target in these fights. DRX, as much as they wanted to contest there, they didn't even stand a bloody chance, did they? Ruler just melted straight through their front line.
And again, this is what we talked about. You spend the whole game fishing, and all it takes is one misstep, one over-eager attempt to gain control of the Baron for the game to fall further out of the hands of DRX. And while scaling versus scaling certainly is something that has to be considered, and execution will always be a part of the equation, 7K gold starts to feel more and more insurmountable. The Baron buff as well, 2 minutes left. The only good news is they don't have the best champions in the world to try and force a siege. Yeah, they're going to grab a couple tier 2s, but short of a DRX mistake, very unlikely they'll grab anything else. That said, Lehends there to back up, waiting, going to go for the Devour, waiting out the timer. TP now coming in. Gen.G think they have their fight now. It's the Camille that's been isolated instantly. Doran now leaping forward. A grand challenge, stepping in, finding a bit more healing. DRX on the back foot. Gen.G, they want more. They got the wave to back them up. A single cannon minion, BeryL locked down. BeryL taken out. Death to the Soraka. Now the single cannon minion, all that remains. Zeka gonna clear that one out. A new wave to come in, and Gen.G taking control of the mid lane.
Health bars are low, so Gen.G are gonna send their top jungle to force down this tier 2 on the top side while Ruler gets through this tier 3 in mid. DRX have thrown so many things at Gen.G, but they found a response to absolutely everything. And you can't really blame DRX. Their only plays this game have been overcommitting numbers to side. How can they engage mid up against this Tahm Kench with a Sejuani on your team, with a Soraka on your team? It's so hard to dive onto them and follow up. Your best bet is these side plays, but Gen.G know it. Lehends has been covering. Doran's ready with the TPs. Chovy too. And the second they overstep for it, Gen.G are there.
And again, DRX think that they have their avenue, they think they have their opening, but both of the single target CC options come out. That is the cue for Lehends to use the Devour. And effortless now for Doran to turn. Gives enough respect to back away, but DRX running out of time, at a deficit, and right now Gen.G absolutely out executing.
BeryL no flash there, instantly picked up by the Overfrost of Chovy. No way out. Baron buff still up for the next 20 seconds. They didn't get the inhibitor, and they're trying to push in a bot wave right now. Chovy doesn't have the TP, but there's the E.
Lehends! He's just eating the top laner, doesn't even mind. He's a support, but he's got the team to back him up. Ruler gonna finish the job, and it is a slaughter in the DRX jungle.
It is clean, calm, and consistent from Gen.G. We talked about how stable and reliable their carries are, while their team is as well. Little to no mistakes.
Lockdown, Zeka, the knock-up now coming in. The Soraka healing will not be enough. DRX have yet to find a win against Gen.G, and this game is not the game where it'll happen. Absolute dominance from Ruler, from Chovy, from the entirety of Gen.G.
37 seconds. Lehends pops the stopwatch, manages to live through the ultimate. Does he die? No, he doesn't.
Forward, Deft locked up, instant cleanse, not enough!
This Varus
taken down, and we talked about it. This is what makes Gen.G terrifying, the consistency and execution. It is top tier, flawless League of Legends.
You can't fault it, can you? They play it by the book, and they play it clean. DRX do everything they can in their power to find these plays, to actually find advantages in any of these lanes, because all 3 lanes are pushing into them. They had to do something, and Gen.G knew it. They read them back. And Ruler on the Varus, despite falling behind in the early portions of the lane, the Herald got him back into it, and he kept farming mid-waves, was sitting very quietly while his team sorted out those side lanes, got his 3 items, started the fight, got a Baron. So, can't really fault it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the team-wide effort to make sure that the Camille and the Sejuani looked absolutely useless this game is outstanding play across the board. It is not just the Tahm Kench pick, it was the excellent vision, it was the discipline to not over-push in the side lanes, because this could have been a much more explosive, much more bloody game, but Gen.G were just in total control of the map.
Yeah, I think DRX want the games to be faster paced. They want Zeka on something that can fight back, not an Azir that can scale. So now I expect DRX to go over to blue side, and it gets a bit complicated for Gen.G because you've got things like Yuumi, Caitlyn, Akali, Sylas, Aatrox. What are you going to leave open that DRX is going to take away to make sure the game is a lot more bloody?
It's a difficult puzzle that has to be solved, of course. See what DRX want to bring to the table. If it's the exact same bands, you can obviously look towards things like Sylas, see what Zeka can do on it. But sadly for DRX, we know what you want to see from them, and those options in draft are limited. It is the Akali, it is the Sylas, and it is going to put them on the back foot. So I feel like in order for them to break through yet another ceiling, whether it was quarters or now into semis, whether it was making out of the LCK, if they want to take another leap forward, we're going to need to see another level. We're going to need to see more from these players.
Yeah, despite this being a disastrous game 1 for DRX and a heartbreaking one in that sense of just they can't do anything, they were down 0-2 against EDG, right? We always doubt DRX, so I expect them to bounce back a lot heavier in this game too because of blue side, and we'll see a much quicker pace game, I expect.
I certainly do as well. Of course, if more than a month of nonstop Worlds action is not enough to satiate you, check out the Riff Reaction podcast on Spotify for even more tasty League content. Every week, hosts Emily Rand and Travis Gafford share the latest League news, deliver hot takes, and respond to fan questions. Of course, stay tuned for the World's final episode, which is dropping soon. And while you queue up the next episode, while you step away, we're going to be breaking down the game at the analyst desk.
Thank you so much, Dracos, and welcome back to the analyst desk here at the State Farm Arena. I love me some riff reaction with Travis Gafford and Emily Rand. Luckily, we got Emily Rand on the desk here to help us break down this series as it happens. Gen.G striking first blood and bringing the series to 1-0. But Vegas, what a different pace we have going here in this series as compared to yesterday. Averaging almost a kill per minute yesterday, and today it was like a kill every 5 minutes?
It was an LCK classic, I would say.
Rotations.
We saw a lot of map movements. We saw a lot of quite clever play pretty much at every stage. I just want to quickly touch on the draft and their approach because we talked so much about it coming into this matchup. And what I'll say is we saw a similar trend from DRX in terms of their limited engage, kind of multiple spread approach with the Sejuani being the primary response to start fights. The Tahm Kench answer from Gen.G was just so smart. And I think that they recognize this approach from DRX and made their options very hard, which put a lot of responsibility and pressure on DRX to get early advantages.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising after they saw the Varus that they didn't respond in 4-5 with that TK ban. I was a little surprised at that. But the other thing we saw, to your point, that was a little bit out of the ordinary, even with a comfortable kind of pushing lane, was that they did pay attention and get first blood on bot side. That did allow them to get first Drake. It did give them a lot of control, and it did look for a little bit like this MF Soraka lane was going to do quite well going forward.
Yeah, and Mark, this is where I want to jump to second blood. Doran finding a solo kill in the bot lane on Deft to kind of talk about the way that these two teams navigated the early game, and Gen.G was kind of able to wrestle their way out of bad lane assignments.
So you're obviously going to be paying attention to solo kill. This is not actually what we care about here. It's actually the minimap. This is the important part of the replay, is how long they've been in this lane assignment. The fact that they had there's supposed to be more to this replay at the beginning, but they had been up there, leaving BeryL with the Camille in the top lane for that entire extended sequence. And that's actually how Gen.G got back in this game. We talk about how good they are about picking things apart. The fact that they realize our bot lane's going bad, first blood happened down there, we've been losing flashes, they go rotate up to the top side, make this lane swap happen, and unfortunately for DRX, they just have the wrong read, thinking that they can just leave Deft down there on the bot side.
A part of what makes Gen.G so good is the fact that Chovy and Ruler are typically unmovable. And if they do ever get moved off the right path, they are immediately put back on it. And we saw that in how they set up the lanes and how they used the Herald to get that gold back into Ruler's pocket. And the stats on your screen are highlighting, even in a matchup that shouldn't go Chovy's way, he was still ahead in CS at 14, and he was up in gold. And Ruler, even though down 20 CS, still found a way back in because of that Herald and investment in plates. And the second that you give these two players any type of window to get ahead, the moment they enter the mid game, this team is almost impossible to stop.
That's to Mark's point about the lane assignments, right?
Yeah, the Ruler's falling behind, Ruler's our carry, get him out of the bad lane, go top, and let's start funneling gold.
And it was kind of surprising that they kept Kingen up there, right? This is the backbreaker fight. After that happened on the top side, they got Ruler back into the game. It did look like DRX were kind of stuck. They were like, well, we kind of want to stall this out, and Gen.G's like, okay, that's fine. Like, as soon as we engage on you and pick one of you off, we completely take over the game, and this is kind of where we see the difference between Gen.G and DRX as teams, unfortunately, going back through the entire LCK season and coming into this tournament. This is exactly why Gen.G is such an overwhelming favorite, is because they just see the map a lot better. They know exactly how to get themselves out of disadvantageous positions, and during a lot of that mid-game posturing, Gen.G really took over the entire map, and DRX didn't know what to do.
I think that moving into the next game, DRX need to up the tempo a bit. I think what we saw in terms of the formula for challenging this roster was attacking the jungle early from Canyon. Now, of course, that's no easy feat. Canyon is, you know, quite the individual. But I think that using that as a formula, as Emily was saying at the beginning of the day, is a way in which you can take advantage of this Gen.G team. Kind of take them off that typical standard path. Because if you just let them play standard League of Legends, there's a reason why they 3-0 T1 in the semifinals. Like, this team is unbelievably good just on the individual level. And the moment you move into the mid game, they're an unstoppable force.
It also goes back to why DRX in the regular season often picked weirder drafts,
right, exactly.
more abnormal, because they want to put it into a situation where they're not just playing heads up. It's an unfortunate situation in League of Legends where, like, when your strengths align with the enemy team's strengths, it can be very difficult actually to win from there, because what you do well is what they do well. They just do it better. And so Zeka and Chovy are obviously very different players, but like those are the strengths right now for both these teams in the current meta. Same with the bot lane. And the fact that they match up so similar, not necessarily in terms of specific picks or playstyle, but in points of power on the map, makes it hard for DRX to find a foot into the game.
And that's why I'm really curious to see if DRX have cooked, mind the pun, up like a really interesting draft on blue side, right? Because we just saw they are going to be swapping to the blue side, and I'm really wondering if we get to if Gen.G rather are going to end up banning the Heimer on red, if they're going to have to end up banning Yuumi on red. I'm really curious to see what this does to swap it up and what kind of pushing lane they might have.
It just makes me wonder if they attended Chef Fias's restaurant last night.
Yeah,
that's the only way you're going to cook something creative up, maybe take down draft poisoning.
Do they want to see my Shaco? Chef is a Shaco.
Yeah, prepare that one for game 3 maybe, all right? All right, check out Gen.G's pick, All In, as the song that represents their play style on the official LoL playlist on Spotify. Take a listen. We'll see you back here for game number 2 right after this.
The eyes on them. Lehends waiting in the brush. Pyosik now going in. This should be an easy kill. There's just everybody in the bot lane. Surprise, baby! That's a Camille and first blood for DRX. Zeka fishing, looking for an opportunity to grand challenge issue. That's the 2-man from Lehends. The follow-up now from Gen.G. They will take their kills down. Zeka, the knock-up now coming in. The Soraka healing will not be enough. DRX have yet to find a win against Gen.G.
Behind 21 epic days of epicness. Behind 1 billion hours of drop jaws. Behind every match, every broadcast, every moment at League of Legends World Championship 2022 is the network capable of making it all happen. The Cisco Network, aka The Realm. Cisco, powering the future of esports.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Bring me the next shiny new